I was standing in the kitchen of my Buckhead home in Atlanta, pouring my second cup of coffee on a Tuesday morning in March 2021, when my phone rang with a 571 area code. Northern Virginia. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. The woman on the other end identified herself as Special Agent Patricia Morrison from the Transportation Security Administration. She asked if my name was Robert James Harrison. I said yes. Then she asked me a question that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Harrison, can you explain how you flew from Atlanta to Miami yesterday using passport number 548,729,341? When our records show you also passed through security at Hartsfield-Jackson that same morning using the same document?" I set my coffee down slowly. "Ma'am, I haven't flown anywhere in 8 months. I've been in Atlanta this entire time." There was a pause. "Mr. Harrison, we have biometric data showing someone who matches your physical description used your passport to board American Airlines Flight 1147 to Miami International at 11:35 a.m. yesterday. But we also have facial recognition data showing you at a different checkpoint in the same airport at 9:20 a.m. That's impossible unless..." She didn't finish the sentence, but I finished it for her in my mind. "Unless my twin brother Marcus was still alive." Before we go further, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from right now, and what time is it there? Drop your location in the comments below, and if this story resonates with you, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. This journey gets darker before it gets light, and I want you here for all of it. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. My name is Robert James Harrison. I'm 62 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. For the past 28 years, I've owned Harrison and Associates, a commercial real estate consulting firm with offices on Peachtree Street in Midtown. My brother Marcus and I were identical twins, born 3 minutes apart at Grady Memorial Hospital on August 14th, 1963. We looked so much alike that even our mama had to check the small birthmark on Marcus's left shoulder blade to tell us apart when we were babies. Growing up, we did everything together. Same schools, same church, same barber shop on Auburn Avenue where Mr. Thomas would cut our hair every other Saturday. We pledged Alpha Phi Alpha at Morehouse College in 1982, joined the same fraternity chapter, and even dated sisters for a brief period in our 20s. But as we got older, our paths diverged. I went into business, got married to Diane in 1989, had 2 daughters, and built a stable life in the Cascade Heights neighborhood before moving to Buckhead in 2007. Marcus went a different direction. He struggled with consistency, had a hard time holding jobs, went through 3 marriages, and developed a gambling problem that cost him everything by the time he was 45. We still talked every week, still had Sunday dinners when he was in town, but there was always this tension. I was the responsible one, the stable one, the twin who had it all together. Marcus was the one who needed help, and I gave it to him. For years, I gave it to him. In March 2020, when COVID-19 hit Atlanta hard, Marcus was living in a small efficiency apartment in East Point, working part-time at a warehouse in College Park. He called me on March 28th, complaining about fever and difficulty breathing. I drove over there immediately, found him barely conscious on his couch. I called 911, and they took him to Grady. He tested positive for COVID-19 that night. His oxygen levels were at 84%. They put him on a ventilator on March 31st. He died on April 6th, 2020, at 6:47 p.m. I was there, watching through the ICU window because they wouldn't let family inside. I watched my brother take his last breath through a glass partition, and I couldn't even hold his hand. The funeral was small because of pandemic restrictions. Only 10 people allowed at Willie Watkins Funeral Home on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Me, my wife Diane, my daughters Jasmine and Nicole, Marcus's third ex-wife, Angela, whom he divorced in 2018, his son from his second marriage who flew in from Dallas, and a handful of close friends from church. We had a short service. Pastor Reynolds from Ebenezer Baptist said some words. We sang, "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." Then we buried him at Southview Cemetery on April 11th, 2020. I remember standing there in the rain, wearing a mask, watching them lower my twin brother into the ground. I remember thinking that a part of me died with him, the part that remembered what it felt like to be connected to someone from before birth, to share DNA and memories and a history that nobody else could understand. I went through the motions for months after that, settled his estate, which wasn't much. $4,200 in a checking account at Wells Fargo, some personal belongings, an old Nissan Altima with 187,000 miles on it. His apartment lease ended in May, so I packed up his things, put them in storage. Angela called me once in June asking if Marcus had any life insurance. He didn't. That was the last I heard from her until November. She called again, asking if I had access to Marcus's documents because she needed something for their son's school records. I told her I had a box of his papers in my home office. She said she'd come by to look through them. She never showed up. Life moved on. I focused on my business, which was struggling because of the pandemic. We'd lost 3 major clients between April and August. I had to let go of 2 employees. Diane and I argued about money for the first time in years. My daughters were both dealing with their own challenges. Nicole with remote college classes at Spelman, Jasmine with a new baby and a husband who'd been furloughed. I was carrying everyone, like I always did. Like Marcus never could. And then I got that call from Agent Morrison in March 2021. Someone had used my passport to fly to Miami. Someone who looked exactly like me. I stood there in my kitchen, trying to process what she was telling me. "Agent Morrison," I said slowly, "my twin brother Marcus died in April of last year. I buried him myself." There was a long silence on the other end. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to need you to come down to the TSA field office in College Park. Today, if possible. We need to verify some information." I looked at the clock on my microwave. It was 9:47 a.m. "I can be there by noon," I told her. She gave me the address, 1099 Lake Point Court, College Park, Georgia. I drove there in a daze. The whole way down Interstate 85, I kept running through possibilities in my mind. Could Marcus have somehow survived? No. I saw his death certificate. I signed it. Dr. Melissa Crawford at Grady Memorial signed it. The state of Georgia issued it. Could someone have stolen my passport? I pulled over at a gas station on Virginia Avenue and checked my home safe when I got back. My passport was there, right where it should be, in the fireproof safe in my closet. Passport number 548,729,341, issued in 2018. Valid until 2028. If my passport was in my safe, then what document had someone used to board that flight? I arrived at the TSA office at 11:52 a.m. Agent Morrison was a black woman in her early 40s, professional, no nonsense. She led me into a small conference room with gray walls and a table that looked like it came from a government surplus sale. She placed 2 photographs in front of me. Both were surveillance images from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Both were time-stamped March 15th, 2021. One showed a man who looked exactly like me going through security at Concourse T at 9:20 a.m. The other showed a man who looked exactly like me going through security at Concourse A at 11:15 a.m., 25 minutes before boarding a flight to Miami. "Mr. Harrison," Agent Morrison said, "which one of these is you?" I stared at both images. The man in the first photo was wearing a gray suit jacket, the same one I'd worn to a client meeting that morning. That was me. I'd flown to Charlotte that day for a 2 p.m. meeting. came back the same evening. But the man in the second photo was wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. He had my face, my build, my hairline. But it wasn't me. And it couldn't have been Marcus, because Marcus was dead. "The first one is me," I said, pointing. "I flew to Charlotte that day for business. But the second one, I don't know who that is." Agent Morrison pulled out another document. A photocopy of a passport, my passport. Same number, same photo, same everything. Except it wasn't a photocopy of my actual passport. The photo was slightly different. The microprint around the edges was wrong. "Mr. Harrison," she said, "someone has created a sophisticated forgery of your passport, and they've used it at least 4 times in the past 6 months. Miami on March 15th, Las Vegas on January 22nd, Houston on December 8th, 2020, and Los Angeles on November 3rd, 2020. My mind was racing. November 2020. That was when Angela had called asking about Marcus's documents. December, January, March. 4 flights, 4 cities. Someone who looked exactly like me. "Do you have surveillance footage from those other airports?" I asked. Agent Morrison nodded and pulled out her laptop. She showed me footage from Las Vegas McCarran International. Same man, same face, wearing a burgundy sweater and khaki pants. Then Houston Hobby Airport. Same man, different clothes. Them lacks? Every single image showed someone with my face, my body type, my exact appearance. "Agent Morrison," I said carefully, "I need to see the death certificate for my brother Marcus Jackson Harrison. Because if these images are real, and if that passport is a forgery, then either my brother didn't die last April, or someone is using his face and my identity to travel across the country." She looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to be honest with you. We've seen cases of identity theft involving deceased individuals before, but we've never seen a case where someone could physically pass for the deceased person's twin brother this convincingly. Whoever is doing this has access to your biometric data, your personal information, and the ability to create federal documents. This isn't amateur hour. This is organized. I left that office at 3:30 p.m. with a folder full of documents, a case number, and a sick feeling in my stomach. I drove straight to Southview Cemetery. It was a cold afternoon, overcast, threatening rain. I'd parked near the section where we'd buried Marcus. Plot 447, Section C, under a magnolia tree. I walked over to his grave. The headstone was simple. Marcus Jackson Harrison, August 14th, 1963, April 6, 2020. Beloved brother, father, and friend. I stood there for 20 minutes, staring at that stone, trying to make sense of what Agent Morrison had shown me. 4 flights, 4 cities. Someone with Marcus's face and my passport. Then a thought hit me like a freight train. What if Marcus wasn't in that grave? I pulled out my phone and called Willie Watkins' funeral home. A woman named Mrs. Patterson answered. I identified myself and asked to speak to someone about a funeral service from April 2020. She transferred me to a director named Mr. Coleman. I explained who I was and asked a direct question. "Mr. Coleman, I need to confirm that my brother Marcus Harrison was actually in the casket we buried on April 11th, 2020. There was an uncomfortable pause. "Mr. Harrison, I can assure you that we follow all proper procedures." "I'm not questioning your procedures," I interrupted. "I'm asking a specific question. Did you personally prepare my brother's body? Did you personally place him in that casket?" Another pause. "Mr. Harrison, due to COVID protocols in April 2020, we had very limited viewings. Your brother's casket was closed during the service due to state health guidelines. But yes, our staff prepared the body according to standard procedures. I need to see your records," I said. "I need to see every document associated with my brother's death and burial." Mr. Coleman cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison, I understand this is difficult, but those are private records. Unless you have a court order or a legal reason to request exhumation, I can't just... Someone is using my brother's face and my identity to commit federal crimes, I said quietly. The TSA is investigating. The FBI will probably be involved soon. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you have any documentation proving that the body you buried in April 2020 was actually my brother Marcus Harrison? The line went silent for several seconds. Mr. Harrison, I think you should come to our office tomorrow morning. Bring any legal documentation you have. We'll review the file together. I hung up and stared at Marcus's grave. The sick feeling in my stomach had turned into cold certainty. Something was very, very wrong. And it had started the moment my brother supposedly died. I got back in my car and drove home. Diane met me at the door. She could see it on my face. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. The TSA call, the surveillance photos, the forged passport, the 4 flights. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said the same thing I was thinking. Robert, you need to call a lawyer. Tonight, I called Stephen Matthews, an attorney I'd worked with on real estate deals for 15 years. He practiced criminal defense on the side. I explained the situation, and he agreed to meet me the next morning at 8 a.m. Then I went into my home office and pulled out the box of Marcus's belongings. I hadn't looked through it since May 2020. Inside were old bills, some photographs, his wallet, his driver's license, his social security card, and his passport. I opened the passport. Issued in 2016. Expired in 2026. Same photo I'd seen my entire life. My face looking back at me, but with Marcus's name. I set it aside and kept digging. Bank statements, utility bills, a lease agreement. And then I found something that made my heart stop. A receipt from FedEx office on Campbellton Road in Atlanta, dated November 18th, 2020, 7 months after Marcus supposedly died. The receipt was for passport photo services and document printing. $47.85, paid in cash. I turned the receipt over. There was a handwritten note in pencil. Pick up Thursday. Use RJH stub. RJH. Robert James Harrison. My initials. My date of birth. Someone had gone to a FedEx office in November 2020, 7 months after Marcus's funeral, and ordered document services using my information. I checked the address on the receipt against my records. FedEx office, 2891, Campbellton Road, SW, Atlanta, Georgia, 30,311. I knew that area. It was 10 minutes from where Angela, Marcus's ex-wife, lived in southwest Atlanta. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. Angela Davis Harrison, age 49, last known address 1847 Cascade Circle, SW, Atlanta. I pulled up Google Street View. Small brick ranch house, well-maintained yard. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I checked her social media. Facebook profile, private settings, but I could see her profile picture. Dated December 2020. She was wearing designer sunglasses and standing in front of the Bellagio fountains in Las Vegas. Las Vegas, January 22nd, 2021. That was one of the dates Agent Morrison had shown me. One of the flights taken using my forged passport. I scrolled through what little I could see of Angela's profile. A check-in at Houston Galleria in December 2020. Houston, December 8th. Another city on the list. I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking. Angela had been married to Marcus for 6 years, from 2012 to 2018. Messy divorce. She accused him of gambling away their savings. He accused her of cheating. They hadn't spoken in 2 years before his death. She'd shown up at the funeral, looking devastated, crying harder than anyone else there. I remembered thinking it was strange, given how bitter their divorce had been. I remembered her hugging me, telling me how sorry she was, how Marcus had been the love of her life, despite everything. And then she'd called me twice after the funeral asking about documents. Documents that were now connected to a forged passport and multiple fraudulent flights. I opened my desk drawer and found the business card Agent Morrison had given me. I picked up my phone and called her cell number. She answered on the second ring. "Agent Morrison, this is Robert Harrison. I think I know who's using my identity. And I think I know why." The next morning, I met Stephen Matthews at his office downtown at 8 a.m. sharp. I showed him everything. The TSA documents, the surveillance photos, the FedEx receipt, Angela's social media check-ins. He listened, made notes, and then looked at me with the kind of serious expression lawyers get when they know you're about to enter a legal nightmare. "Robert, before we go any further, I need to ask you something directly. Is there any possibility, any chance at all, that your brother Marcus is still alive?" I shook my head. "I saw him die, Stephen. I watched it happen. I signed the death certificate. We buried him." Stephen nodded slowly. "Then we're looking at one of two scenarios. Either someone dug up your brother's body, and this is the most disturbing identity theft case I've ever heard of, or," he paused, "or someone who looks exactly like your brother is pretending to be your brother pretending to be you. Angela was married to Marcus for 6 years," I said. "She would know if someone was pretending to be him." Stephen tapped his pen on his desk. "Unless she's in on it. Robert, if Angela is involved, this isn't just identity theft. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of federal documents, and potentially insurance fraud if any death benefits were paid out. This could be a multi-state criminal operation." He pulled out a legal pad. "Here's what we need to do. First, we file a report with the Atlanta Police Department. Second, we contact the Social Security Administration to flag your brother's Social Security number. Third, we request a formal exhumation order for your brother's grave. That'll require a court petition, but given the circumstances, I think we can get it approved within 2 weeks." 2 weeks felt like an eternity, but I knew Stephen was right. We needed to do this by the book. We spent the next 3 hours preparing documents, writing statements, gathering evidence. At 1 p.m., we went to the Atlanta Police Department headquarters on Decatur Street and filed a formal report with Detective Raymond Foster, a veteran investigator in the fraud division. He took our statement, reviewed the evidence, and assigned a case number, a PD 2021084731. "Mr. Harrison," Detective Foster said, "I'm going to be straight with you. This is one of the strangest cases I've seen in 22 years on this job. But if what you're telling me is accurate, and if this woman Angela is using your deceased brother's identity to commit federal crimes, she's looking at serious prison time. I'm going to coordinate with TSA and open a full investigation. In the meantime, I need you to not contact Angela directly. Don't call her, don't visit her, don't tip her off that we're onto her. Let us do our job." I agreed, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait. I needed answers. That night, after Diane went to bed, I sat in my office and did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Curtis Brown, former Atlanta PD, ran a small firm in Decatur. I'd met him through business contacts years ago. I called him at 10 p.m., explained the situation, and asked if he could do some digging. He said he'd start first thing in the morning. "Robert," he said before hanging up, "if your brother is alive, we'll find him. And if someone is impersonating him, we'll find that too. Either way, you'll have answers within a week." That week was the longest of my life. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was somewhere else. Curtis called me every day with updates. He tracked Angela's credit card activity. Purchases in Las Vegas, Houston, Miami, Los Angeles, all matching the dates of the fraudulent flights. He'd interviewed neighbors on Cascade Circle. Several reported seeing a man matching Marcus's description visiting. Angela's house multiple times between November 2020 and March 2021. One neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, said she'd specifically asked Angela if that was Marcus, and Angela had laughed and said, "No, that's just a friend." Curtis pulled Angela's bank records through legal channels with Detective Foster's cooperation. Between November 2020 and March 2021, she deposited $67,000 in cash into her account at SunTrust Bank. Small deposits, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, never enough to trigger automatic federal reporting, but it added up. On March 29, 2021, Curtis called me with the information I'd been waiting for. "Robert, I've got something big." Angela Davis Harrison applied for a life insurance payout in May 2020, 1 month after Marcus's death. She claimed she was still listed as his beneficiary on a $50,000 policy through his warehouse job. The policy was old, from 2015 before their divorce, and Marcus never updated it. The insurance company, MetLife, paid out in July 2020, $50,000 deposited directly into Angela's personal account. I felt my jaw tighten. So she had financial motive. But that doesn't explain the flights, the forged passport, the person who looks like Marcus. Curtis paused. That's where it gets interesting. I did some digging into Angela's family. She has a younger brother. Name's Gerald Davis, age 37, lives in Marietta. Guess what he does for a living? What? I asked. He works at a document forgery operation that got busted by ICE in 2019. He took a plea deal, got probation. His specialty was creating fake passports and IDs for undocumented immigrants. Everything clicked into place. Angela had access to Marcus's personal documents. Her brother Gerald had the skills to create a forged passport. The physical resemblance issue was explained by the fact that Marcus and I were identical twins. So any photo of Marcus could theoretically pass for me in low-scrutiny situations. The only question left was, who was the person actually using the passport? "Curtis," I said slowly, "I need you to find out if Marcus had any other relatives or friends who could pass for him. Cousins, old fraternity brothers, anyone." Curtis was quiet for a moment. "Robert, I think you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't who could pass for Marcus. The question is, what if it actually is Marcus?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That's impossible. I watched him die. "Did you?" Curtis asked gently. "You watched someone die in an ICU through a window while wearing a mask. You saw a body in a closed casket that you were told was your brother. But did you ever actually see his face after he died? Did you ever touch him? Confirm it was him?" I thought back to April 2020. The IQ window, the closed casket, the funeral home telling me viewing wasn't possible due to COVID protocols, the quick burial. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Curtis, I need to request an exhumation order immediately." Stephen Matthews filed the emergency petition that afternoon. We had a hearing scheduled for April 2nd, 2021, but I couldn't wait that long. On April 1st, I did something I knew I shouldn't do. I drove to Angela's house on Cascade Circle. It was 2 p.m. on a Thursday, middle of the day. Her silver Honda Accord was in the driveway. I parked across the street and watched. At 2:47 p.m., the front door opened. A man walked out. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt. He was tall, about 6'1". He had my build, my posture, my walk. And when he turned toward the street to get something from the car, I saw his face clearly for the first time in 11 months. It was Marcus, my twin brother, very much alive. I sat in my car, frozen, watching my dead brother walk across Angela's driveway like he'd never spent a day in a grave. He opened the trunk of the Honda, pulled out grocery bags, and walked back into the house. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned white. Every emotion hit me at once. Relief, that he was alive. Rage that he'd let me believe he was dead. Confusion about how this was even possible. And underneath it all, a cold, calculated anger that I'd never felt before in my life. My brother had faked his death, stolen my identity, and committed federal crimes using my name. And Angela had helped him do it. I pulled out my phone and called Curtis. I'm at Angela's house. Marcus just walked in. He's alive. Curtis didn't sound surprised. Robert, get out of there now. Do not confront them. We need law enforcement present when this goes down. I knew he was right, but every fiber of my being wanted to walk up to that door and demand answers. Curtis, how did he do it? How did he fake his death in a hospital with doctors and death certificates and a funeral? Curtis sighed. I've been working on that. Here's what I think happened. COVID-19 protocols in April 2020 were chaotic. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Grady Memorial had over 200 COVID patients that week. Identity verification was minimal because staff were focused on keeping people alive, not checking IDs. I think Marcus checked in using his real information, got sick enough to be admitted, and then at some point during his stay, he either bribed someone or exploited the chaos to fake his death. Maybe he had help from a hospital employee. Maybe he just walked out and someone covered for him. Either way, the death certificate was filed, and because of COVID restrictions, nobody could verify the body. But I saw him on the ventilator, I said. I saw someone through that IQ window. Did you see his face clearly? Curtis asked. With the ventilator tubes, the sedation, the medical equipment, and the fact that you were viewing through glass while wearing a mask? I thought back to that night. The figure in the hospital bed had been completely covered in tubes and equipment. His face had been swollen from the ventilator. I'd assumed it was Marcus because the hospital told me it was Marcus. But had I actually confirmed it? No, I hadn't. I started my car and drove away from Angela's house before I did something I'd regret. I called Detective Foster and told him everything I'd just seen. He told me to meet him at police headquarters immediately. By 5 p.m. that afternoon, Detective Foster, Stephen Matthews, Agent Morrison from TSA, and 2 FBI agents were sitting in a conference room reviewing the evidence. The FBI agents were Special Agent Kevin Clark and Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, assigned to the Financial Fraud Division. Mr. Harrison, Agent Clark said, based on what you've told us and the evidence your private investigator has gathered, we believe your brother Marcus Harrison is alive and has been engaged in identity fraud, passport fraud, and potentially multiple other federal crimes. We need to move quickly before he realizes we're onto him. They laid out a plan. A coordinated raid on Angela's house, scheduled for 6 a.m. the next morning, April 2nd. Search warrants for both Angela's home and her brother Gerald's residence in Marietta. Seizure of documents, computers, financial records. And hopefully, the arrest of Marcus, Angela, and Gerald on multiple federal charges. What happens to me? I asked. My credit, my identity, my passport? Agent Rodriguez looked at me sympathetically. Mr. Harrison, you're a victim in this case. We'll work with you to restore your identity, freeze any fraudulent accounts, and repair any damage to your credit. But I won't lie to you. This process will take months, maybe years. Your brother didn't just steal your identity. He weaponized your grief and used your DNA against you. I went home that night and told Diane everything. She held me while I tried to process the impossible reality that my twin brother, the person I'd mourned for nearly a year, had been alive the entire time. Why would he do this? Diane asked. Why would he put you through this? I didn't have an answer, but I knew that tomorrow morning I'd get one. At 6:07 a.m. on April 2nd, 2021, law enforcement executed simultaneous raids on Angela's house and Gerald's apartment. I wasn't there, but Detective Foster called me at 7:15 a.m. with an update. We've got them, all three, Marcus, Angela, and Gerald. They're in custody. I drove to the FBI field office in Northeast Atlanta. Agent Clark met me in the lobby and took me to an observation room with a one-way mirror. On the other side of the glass, sitting at a metal table in handcuffs, was Marcus. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, his hair grayer at the temples, but it was definitely him. My twin brother, alive and sitting in federal custody. "Would you like to speak with him?" Agent Clark asked. I nodded. They brought me into the interrogation room. Marcus looked up when I walked in, and for the first time in 11 months, our eyes met. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look guilty. He just looked tired. "Hey, Rob," he said quietly. "Hey, Marcus," I replied. I sat down across from him. "How long have you been planning this?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Since about 6 months before I supposedly died. Maybe longer. I don't know anymore." "Why?" I asked. It was the only question that mattered. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I was drowning, Rob. I had $94,000 in gambling debts. People were threatening me. Real people, not just casinos. I was going to die for real if I didn't figure something out. And then COVID hit, and I saw an opportunity. Hospitals were chaos. Records were chaos. Everything was chaos. Angela's brother Gerald could make documents. Angela still cared about me, despite the divorce. And you," he paused. "You had everything I didn't. Good credit, clean record, a passport that could get me anywhere. We look identical. It was almost too easy. So you faked your death," I said, my voice flat. "You let me watch someone else die in that ICU. You let me bury a stranger. You let me grieve for a year while you traveled the country using my name." Marcus looked down. The person in the ICU was real. His name was James Porter. Homeless guy, no family, also had COVID. He looked enough like us that nobody questioned it when Angela told the hospital it was me. We paid off one orderly to switch the wristbands. That's all it took. One wristband swap, and I became a dead man. James became me. And when James died, everyone thought it was Marcus Harrison. I felt sick. And the casket? What did he bury? Marcus met my eyes. James Porter. He deserved a proper burial. He was a veteran, Rob. He served in Desert Storm. He died alone in a hospital with nobody to claim his body. So we gave him a funeral, and I gave you closure. Win-win? Win-win? I repeated, my voice rising. You let me mourn you. You stole my identity. You committed federal crimes in my name. And you call that a win-win? Marcus shrugged. I needed a fresh start. You had the resources. I didn't. In my mind, I was just borrowing your life for a little while until I could get back on my feet. Borrowing? I stood up, my hands shaking. Marcus, you didn't borrow anything. You stole my identity, forged federal documents, and committed fraud across 4 states. You destroyed my credit, put my business at risk, and made me live through the death of my twin brother. Do you have any idea what that did to me? For the first time, Marcus looked genuinely remorseful. Rob, I'm sorry. I really am. I thought I could fix everything, pay back the debts, disappear somewhere, and you'd never know. But it got out of hand. The gambling debts were bigger than I thought. Angela wanted money for helping me. Gerald wanted money for the documents. I had to keep traveling, keep scamming, keep moving. I couldn't stop. I looked at my brother. This man I'd shared a womb with, shared a childhood with, shared a lifetime of memories with. And I realized I didn't know him at all. What did you think would happen? I asked. Did you think you could just keep living as me forever? Marcus shook his head. I thought I'd have 2 years, maybe 3. Enough time to make money, pay off the debts, and disappear to somewhere without extradition. Costa Rica, maybe. Panama. Somewhere I could start over. But you got greedy, I said. You kept using the passport, kept traveling, kept leaving a trail. And the TSA caught you. Marcus smiled bitterly. Biometric facial recognition. They upgraded the system in March. That's what flagged me. Before that, I could slip through security, no problem. But once they added the new scanners, it was only a matter of time. I sat back down and looked at my brother for what felt like the last time. Marcus, I spent 11 months mourning you. I cried for you. I missed you. I felt like half of me died when you did. And now I find out that you've been alive this whole time, using my name, my identity, my life. How am I supposed to forgive that? Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I don't expect you to forgive me, Rob. I just want you to understand. I was desperate. I made bad choices, and now I'm going to pay for them. But for what it's worth, I never stopped being your brother. Even when I was pretending to be you, I was still Marcus. That never changed. Agent Clark entered the room. Mr. Harrison, we need to continue the interrogation. Thank you for your time. I stood up and walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, Marcus called out, Rob? I turned. Yeah? Marcus looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe. Or resignation. Tell Mama I'm sorry. When you visit her grave, tell her I'm sorry. Our mother had died in 2015. We buried her at Southview Cemetery, 3 rows away from where we'd buried the man we thought was Marcus. I'll tell her, I said. And then I walked out, leaving my twin brother behind. The legal proceedings took 6 months. Marcus, Angela, and Gerald were all charged with multiple federal crimes. Conspiracy to commit fraud, passport fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, falsification of government documents. Marcus took a plea deal and was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Angela got 6 years. Gerald got 4 with credit for cooperation. The FBI helped me restore my identity, freeze my credit, and repair the damage to my financial records. It took until October 2021 to fully clean up the mess. Detective Foster closed the case in November. The story made local news for a week, then faded away. Twin brother fakes death, steals identity. It sounded like something from a Netflix documentary. But for me, it never faded. I spent months in therapy, trying to process what had happened. Grieving someone who died, then discovering they were alive, then losing them again to prison. It was a kind of trauma I didn't have words for. Dr. Patricia Simmons, my therapist, called it ambiguous loss. You're mourning someone who's alive but gone. You're angry at someone you once loved. You're relieved and devastated at the same time. Diane was patient with me through all of it. My daughters checked in every day. My church community surrounded me with support. Slowly, over months, I started to feel like myself again. In January 2022, I received a letter from Marcus. He was at FCI Bennettsville, a federal prison in South Carolina. The letter was short. He apologized again, said he understood if I never forgave him. Said he hoped that one day, maybe years from now, we could talk again as brothers. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. But in March 2022, almost exactly 2 years after Marcus's supposed death, I did something unexpected. I drove to Southview Cemetery. I visited the grave where we buried James Porter, the homeless veteran whose body had taken my brother's place. I stood there for a long time, thinking about this man I'd never known, who'd been buried under my brother's name. Then I called the cemetery office and arranged for a new headstone, a proper one. It read, James Allen Porter, United States Army, 1965 to 2020. Thank you for your service. Rest in peace. It cost me $2,400 to replace that headstone, but it felt right. James Porter deserved to be remembered as himself, not as my brother. And in some strange way, honoring him helped me let go of some of the anger I felt toward Marcus. I realized that Marcus had been right about one thing. James Porter did deserve a proper burial. He'd served his country, fallen on hard times, and died alone. At least in death, he'd been mourned, even if the people mourning him thought he was someone else. As for Marcus, I don't know if I'll ever visit him in prison. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to sit across from him and ask all the questions I never got to ask. Why did you really do it? Was it just the money, or was there something deeper? Did you resent me for having the life you wanted? Did you hate me? Did you love me? But another part of me knows that some questions don't have satisfying answers. Some betrayals are too deep to fully understand. Some losses are permanent, even when the person is still alive. I learned something through all of this, something that took me months to articulate. Karma isn't about revenge. It's not about watching bad people suffer. It's about natural consequences. Marcus made choices. He faked his death, stole my identity, and committed federal crimes. Those choices led to consequences. Prison, a felony record, a destroyed reputation, the loss of his family and his freedom. I didn't create those consequences. He did. My job wasn't to punish him. My job was to tell the truth, gather evidence, and let the justice system do its work. And it did. People ask me if I've forgiven Marcus. The honest answer is, I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated when the person who hurt you is your twin brother. When you've spent 57 years connected to them in a way nobody else can understand. But what I have done is made peace with what happened. I've accepted that the Marcus I grew up with, the brother I loved, made choices that I can't reconcile with the person I thought he was, and I've moved forward with my life. My business recovered. My credit was restored. My family is strong. I'm still Robert James Harrison, 64 years old now, living in Atlanta, working every day, loving my wife, supporting my daughters. I'm still the responsible twin, the stable one, the one who does the right thing. But I'm also the twin who learned that even identical DNA doesn't guarantee identical character. That you can share a face, a history, a lifetime of memories with someone and still not really know them. That grief is complicated, forgiveness is hard, and justice is sometimes the only closure you get. If you've made it this far in this story, thank you for listening. I know it's not the kind of story with a neat ending, where everyone hugs and learns a lesson and walks off into the sunset. Real life doesn't work that way. But I hope there's something in my experience that resonates with you. Maybe you've been betrayed by family. Maybe you've struggled with forgiveness. Maybe you've learned that sometimes the people you love the most are capable of hurting you the deepest. If that's you, I want you to know this. You're not alone. And it's okay to take your time healing. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they share your DNA. Karma isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. And dignity isn't about being perfect. It's about standing in your truth, even when that truth is painful. Even when it costs you someone you love. That's what I learned from my twin brother's betrayal. And that's what I'm still learning every day. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched you in any way, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what you think. Because stories like this matter. They remind us that we're human, that we struggle, that we survive. And sometimes that's enough. My name is Robert James Harrison. I buried my twin brother in Atlanta in 2020, except I didn't. And discovering that truth changed everything. But it didn't break me. And if you're going through something hard right now, I hope my story reminds you that you're stronger than you think. Stay blessed. Stay strong. And remember, the truth always comes to light. Always.